Hi, it's George here from the Unofficial Controller podcast. Just taking a moment to, first of all, thank you for listening. Means a hell of a lot to us. Secondly, every week we bring you free content, the latest news, the new releases, a feature of note, normally something to do with games or gaming past, be it one of our history of documentaries or an insight into the industry itself, or how games have affected us as people. Well, yes, we incorporate you, listeners, into that. All we ask is that you drop a little comment on our post on social media and you can get featured on the show. Hey, do you know what? You may even win a prize. The only charge for this is £0, 0 pence, $0. That's right, no money. But all we ask is that you like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you found this show. And if you're feeling a little bit cheeky, tell a friend, get them to do the same. We have a Discord that's free for you guys to all join in and get involved in, and the community on Instagram and Twitter is alive and thriving. So don't be a lonely gamer. Make yourself known. Thank you. And now it's time to begin this week's entertainment. Take care, guys. Hello and welcome to the Unofficial Controller podcast, your weekly gaming podcast, episode 83, Pixels versus Photorealism. With me, George, and as always joined by Bobby. 8-bit perfection to my... Just hang on a bit. I'm working on it. How's it going?
Good.
Excellent. It's sun's peeking through the clouds out here in New York City. The home of the Unofficial Controller podcast, or the new home of the Unofficial Controller podcast. Now we both live here in the fine United States of America. Should we give fans new and old a little rundown of what we've got coming up, Bobby?
Let's do it.
In the news, we've got some Nintendo Switch news. Yes, even the Switch is making headlines in December. Then we've got the feature, which is Pixels versus Photorealism, incorporating our comments and the listeners' comments, as always. Then we've got the main man himself, ripping down Fifth and Main. The mighty Stingrays going to pop his boot. We're going to take a pick and talk you through the latest new release highlights for this week. And then the show can only end when I ask Bobby what he's hoping to play. But it cannot begin yet because Odders has been doing what can only be described as a Santa run on a sleigh through his local village just to welcome that Christmas spirit on. So Odders, grip that sleigh handle tight, friend, as I say to Bobby, what you been playing?
Oh, I finished Bug Snacks. I got the platinum for that.
Oh.
And I liked it a lot more towards the ending of the game because it kind of took like a dark, sad turn, which I didn't expect at all. So that was pretty interesting. I wish.
Are there any missable trophies, or is it literally you just bolt in, get through it, and pop out? Platinum?
There's something really missable. The last boss battle can be missable. You have to do certain thing, but if you do all the side quests, it's impossible because. It basically, if you finish all the side quests, the last missable trophy is, you can do it without any help at all.
Right, okay.
It'll automatically do it. So that was pretty cool. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did. So it was okay. It wasn't bad at all. And then I just have Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 95 hours in.
Ooh.
Yeah, so basically after 75 hours, whatever it was, I took a little break and did Bug Snacks. But now I'm back on Valhalla.
Okay.
I just got to Jorvik.
Which is Viking York.
Mm-hmm.
How's that? That was their biggest Viking city in the UK. So I'd imagine that looks pretty vibrant, pretty cool.
Yeah, it does look pretty cool, I have to say. It's they're talking about like the Yule, so I guess it's like Christmas time up there or whatever their Yule is. You hear a lot about Yules.
Right, okay.
The only Yule I know is on the MSG channel, where they put the Yule on the TV.
Are you sure it's not Jarl?
No, Yule. It's Yule.
Okay, all right. Well, that's...
Which I don't know. It's okay. Maybe once I do a little of the story, maybe there'll be something that can kind of explain it. I guess I don't know.
I wonder if it's based on the time of your console. But there's no snow on the ground in the rest of the UK, or is it? It's saying that it must be based around autumn because some of the trees are losing their leaves and turn brown.
Yeah, like I noticed,
a thematic decision, but
as you go north, there's snow, and I guess they're making it colder. I guess it's kind of weird, almost like Tsushima.
yes,
Kind of where you would go would be rainy or foggy, sunny. So I'm guessing it's kind of the same. I mean, I don't know why the north would be cold, but hey, listen, it's a video game.
Well, it is a little bit colder the further north you get in the UK, but
that's true too. It's here too. Yeah.
Certainly doesn't go from spring to winter in a matter of meters, does it?
No.
Is there anything else? Oh,
no, that's it. Really, that's it.
I have also been playing a little bit of Valhalla. The latest story that I've done is the one where you help put King. Is it Desmond on the throne with his?
In East Anglia.
Yes, that's the best. That's the best side story. That's the best story I've done in Valhalla to this point.
That's pretty cool.
The characters were good. He was good. Great juxtaposition. I liked the wedding. I thought that was quite good.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, did a good job.
Yeah, no spoilers there because obviously this takes a little bit of a turn towards the end, and I was a little bit heart in mouth. I was like, "Oh no, don't say no, please."
Yeah,
his wife is beautiful. I'd marry her in digital form. She would take my hand in marriage.
Tattoos and all.
Yeah, the whole bag of tricks. She shaved her eyebrows off and put circular tattoos for eyebrows, but I'm not bothered. Finished Miles Morales. What can I say about that? I don't think I'd said I'd finished it last week. I think we had a few more bits to do. We cleaned it up, and we've got every trophy bar the New Game Plus and the 100 Plus combo, which will fall for us naturally because the amount, the baddies and the frequency of them presents themselves in the New Game Plus much easier. So we've got 100 Plus combo or 100 combo to do and finish the New Game Plus, and that's the platinum for that.
Beautiful.
Didn't outstay its welcome. In a way, the length of the game was far more sort of suitable than maybe the original Spider-Man was, where there were times where it sort of maybe you were a little bit sort of like, oh God.
To me, kind of had like a little bit of mid-game drag, just a little bit. But then it picked up.
It picked up and it accelerated towards its conclusion, and the opening few hours of that game are really quite fun. But Miles Morales didn't need to hold your hand and talk you through it. There was an assumption that you've already played the original game. So a lot of it's just, in a way, it's not a difficult game, but I'd imagine that you could consider yourself being thrown in at the deep end. But the new powers mix it up, the Venom powers, keep it fresh, keep it exciting, keep it moving. How they can do... I almost want them to rest Spider-Man now because I really don't know how they could do a Spider-Man 2 in Manhattan and keep our interest again. Because it would be very, very similar.
The only thing they could do that I could think of is open up the other boroughs.
Yeah, but Manhattan makes sense to swing around because the scale and the height of the buildings.
Yeah, that is true, yeah.
You're going to be doing an awful lot of running on the street in Queens if you're not careful, and I think that would be really boring. Like walking around Long Island because most houses are 2 stories high. It's not going to work. So Manhattan makes sense. But a third game in Manhattan, because there was even times in Miles where I was sort of swinging around and I was thinking, this is good, and I'm liking the new Venom powers, and I'm especially liking the Spider-Man the Cat storyline that fully evolves when you finish the game. But what can I say? PS5, when you're executing the moves at the ray tracing and it does a slow-mo move of you doing the Venom, you realise just how pixel perfect that game is. It looks fantastic. So I implore anyone to get that.
You think that's why maybe Arkham Knight, people kind of like, oh God, it's more of the same but new? Because you did really 3 games in Gotham City.
Yeah, I think Arkham Knight's the new upcoming semi-multiplayer online game without Batman, but with Robin, Batgirl, and all those. I'm actually quite excited for that.
I'm excited for it too.
More so than I am Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I don't even know enough about that to even understand what that's supposed to be. But it kind of grew on me now that you can drop in, drop out with your friends. That's pretty cool.
Wait, hang on. Let's address the devil in the room. Cyberpunk 2077. I've got it, obviously. After our hands-on sort of behind-the-scenes preview we did last week, that's gone down really, really well. And if you're a new listener off the back of that, thank you. Welcome to the family. Don't forget to join the Discord. Blah, blah, blah. Putting all that to one side. Cyberpunk 2077, I'm playing it backwards compatible mode on the PS5, and it is a wonderful game.
Mm-hmm.
We'll put the glitches to one side. We'll talk about those in the news because we've got a section dedicated to that. I have never played a game where the tutorial is so long. I mean, I think I'm technically still in the tutorial, but the first 3 or 4 hours is very, very handholdy. And obviously off the back of the perception of what you've seen in the advertisements and stuff. And I don't blame them for that, because you've got to refine a 150-hour experience down into a 2-minute to a 30-second clip that makes it suitable to be an advertisement of the products. That it's going to look a little bit, But you know me, I'm a stickler for detail. Like the first time you meet a Ripperdoc and get a cyber enhancement, you see it all happen. The second time you visit a Ripperdoc, it's just a menu. The first time you eat a meal, you see them eating or drinking and it feels great. Next time you go, it's just a menu where you buy a drink and consume it like a stat. So I would rather it was, and there's only so many restaurants, but you walk by a million restaurants to get to a restaurant that will actually serve you food. And then you think to yourself, well, is there any point? Because I just pick up bits of like chocolate bar off the floor and no one says anything and no one cares. And I consume that and that gives me health. Yeah. And I'm mostly living off like stim packs and meds. If you get shot, you eat a little bit of med and boom, you're all right again. So some of the level of interactivity and depth I thought would be there isn't there. So that's an issue. But once the game sort of finishes the first opening heist section and you meet Johnny Silverhands, I'm not going to reveal how or why that takes place, but it does. Excuse me. And the world opens up. You start to feel a little bit overwhelmed, but I would recommend anybody start with the Delamain cab missions straight off the bat, because it's a nice way of easing yourself into the world, visiting all the islands while staying relatively low key and off the radar. There is a little bit of combat in there, but it's not that difficult. There was one section that had struggling a little bit, but I sorted my clothing out, so my armor rating went up, and I sort of walked through that section. I just can't get enough of it. Although it's crashed on me numerous times now. When we last spoke, it crashed a couple of times. I would say I'm up to about 5 times now. Mm-hmm. One thing I would recommend, and I will say it again in the news, is turn your console off. Off. Don't put it in rest mode. So end the game, turn the console off, make sure you got the update, and restart the console from a power boot. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I mean, if I had a PlayStation 4 vanilla from 2014, I might be a little bit blue, I'd imagine, because I should say it doesn't run very well on there from the videos I've seen from our friends at Digital Foundry. But I'm in a privileged position where I'm playing it on PS5, and I haven't really got that many bad words to say about it. I wish it was deeper. I wish it was more involved. I know that sounds crazy, but we'll see how it simmers in. I'm probably about, I think I looked last night and I've already done over 20 hours in it.
Whoa, look at you.
I know, plus the time I've done. Dude, I haven't even seen Cyberpunk flash up on the screen yet, so I'm not even to the point where the titles have popped. Can you believe
Wow.
That? I've been doing a lot of side missions because some of the early missions grind you to have money, and I rather foolishly paid off a Ripperdoc that I owed money to that didn't even want the money, and I was like, no, take it. And I blew 22 grand on this dude, and I probably shouldn't have done. I shouldn't have done, but now I need to grind for 15 grand, and I'm 5 grand short, and it's a little bit of a problem because I keep seeing clothes that I want and cyber optics that I want, and not that it changes anything up apart from in the background. In the preview, I said it would be a glitchy dice rolling mess in the background. Mm-hmm. That's true. That's absolutely true. Really? Very much so. The only other thing I've been playing a little bit, Astrobot VR. Still fantastic. The standout mission was where you get eaten by a whale and you're navigating through the insides of the whale. And because it's moving around in the sea, the water level changes inside. And Astrobot's got a little rubber ring on, and he floats up and you're underwater, and then the water goes down and you have to wait for the water to go up to get him on different platforms. The surround sound on the headphones and everything that you're seeing is just so entrancing. It is an absolute system seller, in my opinion. And as I said last week, I'm late to the party. I know I am, but for me, Blood and Truth, Astrobot VR, and No Man's Sky VR are an absolute reason to get a headset. No question. Killer apps. The only other thing I've been playing, which is a little bit strange of me, but this is classic me, I've been playing some Ratchet and Clank on the PSP. Size matters, because why not at this point?
Exactly.
With that all said and done, Bobby, I would imagine it's probably time to jump into the news. We scoured the very darkest regions of the internet to bring you the latest stories. First up, I shall go first, Bobby. Miles and Peter. As is already the case with Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, as was teased by Insomniac Games earlier in the week, Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered now includes a performance ray tracing option, which allows you to enjoy the game at 60 frames per second with ray tracing enabled. Overall, this lowers the base resolution, but fuses the title's two graphical options to provide a best of both worlds. Question, listeners, did you get the remastered edition included on the Miles Morales Special Edition on PS5, or have you had enough of that original game already? I'm still loving the PS4 original remastered for PS5, but are you? Drop us your thoughts on Discord or socials. Bobby, what do you make of this? They've managed to squeeze ray tracing and 60 frames per second out of both Miles and Peter's PlayStation encounters for the PS5.
I think that's pretty awesome that they did that. I'm excited to check it out.
Again, these are sort of hybrid cross-gen games, aren't they? Although Miles is definitely doing stuff that you couldn't do on the... Although it is on PS4, the PlayStation 5 version is doing things that you couldn't do on the PS4. And the same for the Marvel Spider-Man on the PlayStation 5, the remastered edition. It does court Sony's want to take a game off the last gen, polish its face up a little bit, like Mumsy spits on a wet handkerchief and wipes dirt off your face. They like to do that to their last gen titles, like last gen on PS4. We had Last of Us Remastered doing a very similar set of tricks on us. Can we forgive them? I mean, I like the fact that I got Spider-Man digitally as part of the Miles Morales PlayStation 5 game, because I got the Ultimate Edition or whatever it was called. And it means it's just sat on the hard drive. So I ain't got if I'm feeling lazy and I want to play something different, I just go to the menu, select go, and I'm in. I don't have to get a disc out. I don't have to move off the couch and therefore spill Cheetos all over myself. But yeah, are you getting Miles at some point in time?
Yeah, definitely. I asked the big man Santa.
Oh, excellent news.
Why not, bro?
If anyone can get you one, he can.
100%.
Are you just getting Miles, or are you gonna, or is it I don't know if the PlayStation 5, I never actually researched this, because I know you can buy, if you put the PS4 version in, it upscales it to the PS5 game anyway, the remastered one.
Well, no, I got the PS5 Ultimate. I asked for it.
You've got the Ultimate coming. Right, okay. So the good news with that is, because I think if you put the original Spider-Man in, it downloads a PlayStation 4 version for you to play on backwards compatibility, and then clutters up your hard drive with a PS5 version as well. So a little bit messy, that sort of implementation from Sony, whereas Xbox have got that sewn up in a cocked hat, like the smart delivery that they've got.
When I first put in Valhalla, I was like so surprised that it asked me which version I want to play. Obviously, the PS5 version.
Did you buy PS4 Valhalla, or did you buy PS5?
I bought PS5.
You see,
and when I put it in, it asked me.
I got paranoid. I've checked this more than once. I only got the choice of the PlayStation 5 version. But
see, if I go right now and look, it'll say game management or whatever. It'll ask PS4, PS5. So I'm always on the PS5 version.
Yeah, snap.
It's just so strange. But I mean, Valhalla looks great. I never checked the PS4 option to look. I've only done PS5. Maybe I should check it out and see if there's any differences, but obviously it might be a little slower. I mean, the loading time is quick because I take about 2 steps and boom, I'm in the next section.
Yeah, snap.
Fast travel.
Yeah.
So obviously it should be a little longer on the PS4.
Well, no, because you're playing it on PS5, aren't you? So it's going to be the same.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Makes sense.
Yeah. What's next out the news bag, Bobby?
We got It's Never Gonna Switch Off. Nintendo has announced that the Switch outsold its rivals to be the best-selling console of November 2020 in the U.S. The achievement means that the system has now held the best-selling console honor for 24 months in a row.
Wow.
Figures, that's incredible. Figures provided by the NPD group show that the combined sales of the Switch and the Switch Lite systems hit over 1.35 million throughout November, with Thanksgiving and Black Friday no doubt giving the console a decent boost. The Switch has now sold 6.92 million units in the US so far this year, a total which has already bettered the entirety of 2019. The result also means that the Switch has managed to outsell both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S consoles in their first month in sale. It's worth noting, however, that the retailers all over the country very quickly sold out of stock for the new systems. So it may have been a different story if more units had been available. Nick Chavez, Nintendo America's Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing, explains that the company continues to see unprecedented demand for the Switch. He says Nintendo Switch offers a unique position for shoppers this holiday season with the ability to play on the TV or portably in handheld mode. We continue to see unprecedented demand for the Nintendo Switch, and we are pleased that all people of all ages and gaming skills will be experiencing Nintendo Switch this holiday and beyond.
Beautiful story. It's nice to know that they are falling off the curve. They took that decision to go handheld, and that's their USP. It's a home system on the go, which they have to be applauded for. But I think I've said on several times on the show, they've almost painted themselves into a corner. They can't do a home console again that's not portable because this user base will drop off. So they've almost got to keep it going.
But I think with the technology, let's say whatever they're going to call it, the Switch 2 or whatever, it could only get better.
Yeah, you'd hope so. You'd hope so.
It's good for Nintendo, man.
Well, these numbers,
they're never going to go away.
I can't imagine that the Switch really costs that much to develop and build, so they must be into profit big time. Again, classic Nintendo. They change the rules, and then they consistently make money. So fair play to them. I know a lot of people out there gaming on the Switch and enjoy it. For me, it's just not got that level of fidelity in the hardcore games.
Certain games I really enjoy, and I'll play, like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, it was great on PS3 and PS4, fine, but it's just the perfect visual setup for the Switch. My girlfriend did Animal Crossing. Zelda looks great.
Yeah.
Odyssey looks good. I wouldn't play, a AAA game on it. I can't imagine it being the best. But for what Nintendo's selling its own games, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Top notch.
Well, you thought we wouldn't say anything. The next bit of news, you thought we wouldn't say anything. Well, Cyberpunk, let's face it, Bobby, it's caused some internet fever, hasn't it, over the course of the past week. Before I get stuck into that, one thing I would say is there are a lot of people on social media screaming that crunch isn't acceptable. And, CD Projekt Red and the likes of Rockstar and people like that, would jump down their throats. But now a game's launched, and it's a bit buggy, admittedly. I've seen a couple of visual glitches. One time a guy I was talking to didn't sit in a seat. He just levitated 6 foot in front of the seat, which I forgave because it's a huge open world and it's early days and fair enough. And I've had some crashes. So, it's not perfect. And I admit I'm, again, playing on a newer system, so I'm probably not experiencing the very worst Cyberpunk could be. Let's say on vanilla PS4 or base Xbox One, launch Xbox One. But it plays better than any PS3 Bethesda game that launched during the PS3 era. Oblivion was broken to the point, if you actually managed to finish Oblivion on PS3, well done to you, because the more you saved, the slower it got. So I'd imagine by the time you ended up, it was probably on 1 or 2 frames per second, and it never got patched. Anyway, these people, they demand there's no crunch in the industry. Then a game launches and it's broken in places, and they're demanding that CD Projekt Red fix it immediately. Well, that means them crunching during the Christmas period, where they've already been crunching to get the game out, so they won't get time with their families. So probably a little bit controversial of me to say. Also, a lot of people saying, why did you even launch on PS4? You should just launch it on PS5. It's all about the money. Well, it is about the money, but also I'd imagine the same sect of people on the internet that demand it's fixed immediately, who have got the original consoles. If CD Projekt Red had announced last month that actually, do you know what? We've looked at it. We can't get it running on the base consoles. We're not going to launch there. We're going to launch exclusively on next gen. They would have screamed the house down. Mr. and Mrs. Consumer would have screamed the house down. How can you do that? I've been looking forward to this game. I've had it on pre-order. I now need to buy a $450 system, which aren't even available, so I can play the game. So it's $500 all in just to play this game. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. I'd imagine that if you refreshed your console mid-gen last cycle, so you got the One X or the Pro, the game's just about workable. But it's a very adventurous idea for a game. It's very highbrow, and there's a lot going on. There's not as much going on as I thought there would be, but there is still a lot going on. Anyway, we've got hopefully some tips and tricks to help you maximize your experience. First up, fidelity. Cyberpunk 2077 is based around a visual style of an 80s retro future, but if you don't want any of that, head to the options, turn off film grain and chromatic aberration. Imagine these two options a little bit like the Kurosawa filter on Ghost of Tsushima. Yes, it looks ice cold cool, but I can understand why some people don't like it per se, because it does add some mist and phase and fog to the graphics. If you want it to be super sharp representation, then turn those off. I've flicked them on and off depending on how I feel. Also, one would imagine that although it only makes a small difference, turning off any graphical filter eases up just a little bit of processing power. In our playtest as well, HDR is worth turning on if you have a 4K HDR set, obviously, but you need to tune it. So you can't just turn it on and expect. A lot of people have been turning HDR on in the options thinking that's sorted. Now, I know the PlayStation does some HDR calibration in the dashboard. None of that matters here, because, you know, Cyberpunk does it its way. And you need to tune it. Sometimes every single time you turn the console and Cyberpunk on, you need to set your nits for your TV. So your TV's got a nit rating for its HDR light balance. So check in what that is and you can tune it too. I would say a great compromise is 900 and set your Paperwhite value to 200 and then leave the third option to 2 from memory. That resulted in a really nice image. It wasn't washed out. You know, if you were in a dark room, you could still, from the light sources in the room, make out the color of people's faces. You could see them. When I turned it off, they were just all in darkness, so you couldn't really see them. So I'd recommend turning it on, but don't just turn it on and expect. It's basically a PC game that's been gimped to run on a console. That's all these sliders and options. That's all it's for. Secondly, the bugs, as we mentioned in the what you've been playing section and earlier. My experience of them has been low in frequency. It might be my slow pace absorption of the world, but I'm not hanging around either. I mean, we've talked at over 20 hours in. But it has crashed. So top tip, make sure you got the latest patch, 1.04. This will help a lot. Other than that, please be patient. As we said before in the news, it's, it's probably, I don't think I've mentioned it actually, it's probably one of the slowest burning games I've ever played. And I can understand if you were hyped off the trailers and you thought, oh, brilliant, futuristic GTA, I'm getting that. I should imagine your local GameStops have probably built a small pallet's worth of Cyberpunk 2077s already. Also, yeah. I know that Sony and Microsoft have been sort of coerced into giving digital refunds as well. So, yeah, and that brings us to the final point. Sometimes very tongue-in-cheek in the Stingray new releases section, we mention Stadia. But if you want a great way to play Cyberpunk 2077 without the furor of the console, let's say you've bought it on original Xbox, original PS4, it's not running very well, and you're frustrated, there are ways to get Stadia super cheap. You've already got a controller that will work with your Fire Stick if you've got one, or you could pop down to your local supermarket and pick one up. If you, I think there's a Cyberpunk option at the moment where you can get Google Stadia for a stupidly cheap amount of money. Get it. Get Cyberpunk on there. I mean, Google's supercomputer is the most powerful console. I mean, let's face it, they've got more money than sense, Google. And if they've built a gaming rig, Bobby, one would imagine it's pretty good. And from what I've seen, Stadia, especially if you've got the internet for it, and I'd imagine most people have got good enough internet for this, Cyberpunk will blow your brains out. And it might be the first foothold in the hardcore gamer market Stadia we're looking for. From what I've seen, it's probably the best place to play it, bar a home PC rig that's probably cost you £20,000. Stadia doesn't cost anywhere near that amount of money. So, maybe if you want to experience it this December and you can't wait and you want to play it in the best fidelity you can with all the options turned on and there'll be crowds and crowds and crowds of people, try it out. Try it out. What's the worst you could lose? Maybe $10. All right.
Yeah, true.
It's not the end of the world. And let's face it, Cyberpunk on any other medium is going to run you somewhere in the region of $50, whatever. So money in your pocket, gamer friends. Question though, Bobby, for you. Did we miss anything? Do you, dear listener, have an opinion or take on the news that we missed? If so, Bobby, how would the collected masses get in contact with us and say to me, George, Stadia is dead. I don't know what version of Cyberpunk you're playing, but you got no idea. You can't have an opinion on crunch because the only thing you know about crunching is your cereal when you get up in the morning, and you don't normally get up till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You are lower than a rattlesnake's belly. You are the skin that scrapes off a rattlesnake's belly as it crawls under a low fence.
Jesus.
If they wanted to let me know that. And also that the Switch rocks. And yeah, I'm still playing Spider-Man on PS5 or whatever else we've asked them, Bobby. How would they get in contact with us?
We're just at Instagram, over on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
You can hit us up on the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
You can send an email to questions@unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com.
Doesn't really get much easier, does it?
Nope.
Send us a question or a comment that makes us intrigued or raises an eyebrow. And let's face it, every month we give a prize. Don't forget as well, at the end of January, we're also giving a prize for the person that's been the most unofficial controller-like on the Discord. So if you're not there, get there, check it out, get involved in the community, be a good egg, and you could be sipping out of an unofficial controller travel mug or sitting on an unofficial controller podcast Piles pillow. Yeah, I said Piles pillow. No, I'm not bothered. It's time for the feature, Bobby. The meat in the sandwich of the Unofficial Controller podcast. It's pixels versus photorealism. I'm excited by this. An interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, pixels is all you got with character animations drawn on a grid. Much like today, today's hammer beads are used to create our 18 and 16-bit heroes of old. Drawn on a grid, these characters and backgrounds could still ooze style, yet we wanted and expected the push for photorealism. But why? Pixels were a relic to time as we push forward, ditching them for the ever-forward march of technological advancement. We were soon gushing over the rudimentary polygons of the 32-bit era, while at the time we shunned the pixels, and any game releasing with pixels, by the odd exception, would get slaughtered in the press and left on shelves by consumers. Castlevania was an exception on PlayStation, but sadly Shinobi X, although possibly the best Shinobi game, was left hanging on its shelves. Did you play Shinobi X, Bobby? Have you ever had the opportunity?
No.
You would absolutely love that game. I don't know if you've got an emulation system that will run a Saturn game, but Shinobi X is like the pinnacle of Shinobi games. It it leverages all of the Saturn's power to do sort of photorealistic. So when I say photorealistic, the backgrounds, the parallaxing backgrounds of old that were all hand drawn. These ones are fantastic. It's got a CD soundtrack. It's got multiple scrolling levels. It really plays to everything that Sega thought the 32-bit era would be, which is an evolution of the 16. But when it launched, apart from like particular keen Sega magazines, games like Shinobi X and side scrollers were just getting poo-pooed because people were demanding I can hear the New York's Finest in the background. They were poo-pooed. Castlevania, I think, I don't know how, but it got off slightly easier on PlayStation. It was a launch window game. Spirit of the Night, Symphony of the Night. Forgive me, I've sinned. Hopefully they'll let me get away with that slip up. I'm sure they'll let me know in the Discord that I'm a below average gamer. That got away with it, and it's been hailed as a little bit of a gaming icon since, whereas Shinobi X, although still pricey on the second-hand market these days, nowhere near as lauded. You've played Symphony of the Night, right?
Yeah, I have that. I love that game.
Fantastic game.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I would say Shinobi X equal to it in stature.
Wow.
And for a man who likes sort of Twitch gaming, old school sort of challenges, yeah, I think you ought to
go on,
get on your emulation station and see if you can find it. It's so overlooked, but it's everything you liked about Shinobi, ramped up to 11.
That sounds cool. That sounds real cool.
Do you want to take us through the next section, good sir?
Let's take a look back at pixel art movement. Pixel art was video game presentation like paint and an easel, which is a classic artist. There are different eras of gaming. There are many distinct styles, and it's very fascinating to see the evolution of pixel art over time. From the arcade to the creations in modern consoles, pixel art is an important benchmark in how video games as a whole have progressed and how they present their stories and gameplay. The early years of pixel art were a bit rough due to technological tech.
I probably spelt that wrong as well.
No, just due to technical restrictions and the general lack of experience most developers had with games in motion. This had led to extremely simple blocks attempting to resemble objects and was heavily dependent on the imaginations of players to fill in the blanks.
I mean, would you even... Pixel art through the years, when we talk early years, and this has got the notable uses of the style, the Magnavox Odyssey, the ColecoVision, the Atari 2600, these literally are like early cave art. It's like a man sat in a cave, swarmed his fingers in some blood and scrubbed a man on the wall. That's
so true.
That's what
because when I was young, before the Nintendo, my father already had an Atari.
Mm-hmm.
So we had loads of Atari games, but some of the best looking art on the box I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
I mean, that is an art form that's lost. That should be another show, right? But then you put the game in, and it's like, I have to imagine this is a hill, or this is a building, or that's really Superman with that cape that's just really just like a long rectangle. I mean, it's crazy.
I only had the only thing I had close to anything in that era was I had access to, every now and then my uncle would dust off the Atari 2600 and we would play some of these rudimentary games. I think Pitfall's probably the most graphically advanced game of that era that I ever saw. And I had a Pong clone, and you show them to a kid now and they're just going to wonder what the hell you're talking about. There you go. But things moved on quickly, Bobby. Next up was the 8-bit era. Though still decently limited in its technological sense, it was clear developers had grown more ambitious in their attempts at engaging their audience with recognizable characters. This led to appealing game worlds with detailed background, hidden areas, and limited attempts at replicating cinematic cutscenes, reminiscent of movies at the time. The shortcuts taken to create stories led to a development of many of modern gaming stories. Notable uses of the style: the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Master System, and of course, king of pixel art, the Game Boy. For me, the Master System was a very powerful machine for an 8-bit machine, but the icon really of the 8-bit era has probably got to be Nintendo. They were creating such fantastic worlds, and I would say, for me personally, I don't know about you, but Super Mario Brothers 3 really was the pinnacle of what was achievable. I mean, the original
and that
Mario,
didn't even look. It didn't really look too pixelated either. It was just so advanced for the system. Like I know Batman looked really well. I'm trying to think what else looks really well on that. That's all I can think of right now. I had a little bit of a brain fart.
It happens.
But those two games for sure look.
The listeners don't realise that when we record, I turn off all the lights and point a very hot white light in your eyes and almost interrogate you for the.
It's like, it is. You know what it is? You have all these things in your head, and then when you go to say it, you're like, forgot.
Well, I think that from memory, wasn't there like Ian Hoffman's Pro-Am or whatever? I remember that looking pretty good on the NES. Most of the Nintendo first-party titles look great. But, the early Zelda looked a bit wonky. It almost looked like it had fallen off the 2600, didn't it? But by the time they'd pumped out Mario 3, things were looking quite smart. And the Game Boy, it's got 2 colours or however many colours.
Yeah, but how cool
But they're
was
all
that?
green. But
They did a great job.
they did a great job. And there's some games on the Game Boy, like Zelda, Link to the Past, etc. No, it's not Link to the Past, is it, on the Game Boy?
No.
Link's Awakening, I think it's called. That looks fantastic. For the choice of 2 colours, one of them which is green. I think it looks great. Bobby, why don't you chair us through the 16-bit era, friend?
We got the 16-bit era, as arcades had reached their peak, console graphics and advanced to the point where they could properly replicate what the arcades had. The game creators had refined pixel art to the point that they felt comfortable to venture away from their arcade origins and created their own distinct game worlds and can hold up with games releasing currently. Some games even attempted to blend pixel art with early renditions of 3D to varying areas of effectiveness.
Yeah, so we look at something like, a prime example of that would be Star Fox on the SNES or Starwing, depending on where you're from.
Yeah.
The pixel art of the characters in the bottom corner, like, that looked wonderful, whereas you had, obviously, the garage shaded 3D polygons of the ships and the planets, which at the time were mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it recently, but Super Star Wars, I'll always have a soft spot for the 16-bit pixel art in that because
it looked amazing.
It looked great.
Even Marvel superheroes, the gems, where you played as, that looked great. The X-Men Mutant Apocalypse looked awesome. Batman and Revenge of Batman and Robin looked great on that. Obviously Super Mario World looked phenomenal. But there were so many good-looking games.
Do you know what I would like? That on the 16-bit, let's use Super Star Wars as an example, and you've got the Sandcrawler level where now I remember there was an issue of Games Master magazine, a magazine here in the UK, that had managed to, they'd taken the Sandcrawler, which you go through the exterior of, and you get all the way to the top and then drop inside, and then the next level's the inside. But they'd taken screenshots of all of the screens that made up the exterior of the Sandcrawler and then compress them down so you could see the whole image with the platforms on it and everything like that. I would pay money for a print of a recreation of that, so it's almost like you can zoom the camera out from the 16-bit Super Star Wars and see the whole level, because it was broken down into screens, because you had to sort of move to the edge and then it would shimmy all the way over, and then you would do the back end of the Sandcrawler.
Like a little level map. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and as long as it was on your wall, using all the original assets, I think it was fantastically done. And there's many levels in there that were multiple level. In fact, they even did one of the interior as well, which, although it didn't fit the exterior exactly, it was still good enough where it had lots of bits in, and it was wonderful, absolutely wonderul.
100%. Some of the 16-bit games look really, really well. Even now, you could put it on and really appreciate it.
Oh, of all the machines that, I don't have, I've got a Master System, but I don't have it set up because, to be honest, no. And the same with the NES. But the Mega Drive, absolutely, I'll play that all day long. I think it looks fantastic. It's almost like the evolution of the pixel art to the point where it's like, do you know what? This is I could play this all day. It's acceptable. It's a game. It's got the gameplay, and we'll get to that. But it's almost like the happy cross section. The end of an era, the dark ages of pixel art. As consoles like PlayStation and Nintendo 64 worked we're both struggling this week, diligently to advance the concept of using 3D models to represent characters, pixel art began to slowly fall from popularity. From this point on, pixel art didn't notably advance very much, with most games simply refining art from previous consoles as opposed to creating a new style for themselves. There are a few exceptions. So a few stubborn companies who refused to utilize the 3 dimensions until it was perfected, but those companies had lost prominence in the industry because of that choice. Notable users of the style in the dark ages of pixel art, the Game Boy Advance, which has to be remembered for its iconic recreation of many SNES games, and the Sega Dreamcast, which obviously with some of its 2D games looked fantastic. But again, I remember at the time, you would often sort of poo-poo a 2D game on the Dreamcast because I want 128 bits or whatever 3D. I want the 3D games. It's a shame, really. But I think the Game Boy Advance was possibly the dawning of the new era, because even I, at the time, it wasn't that long ago that I'd put the SNES to bed. But playing the Game Boy Advance, it gave me like a sense of nostalgia for the Super Nintendo. and games like, you know, all the classic 16-bit Marios, all the Mario Kart, although it's a recreation, it's not a pixel-to-pixel perfect copy of the original Mario Kart. It's an advanced version, excuse the pun, but it's certainly it's very different when you play them side by side. But I think the Game Boy Advance one does win out ultimately. In if you want to play it now, you would want all the added benefits of the modern version. So Game Boy Advance, fantastic way of playing some pixel art games. What's next, Bobby?
Got modern times and the resurgence of pixel art. Despite the third dimension establishing its own dominance in game presentation, pixel art still persists, albeit in a smaller amount than its heyday. Nowadays, pixel art has been mainly relegated to handheld consoles and indie games that go for a retro style. Despite its diminishing presence, pixel art is still evolving, having worlds that rival and even surpass their polygon counterparts. I have to say, like, I reviewed it for Halloween, the Camp Sunshine game.
Oh, yeah.
They use pixel art, I mean, really, really well. Almost like the best version of a 16-bit game you can possibly get. I thought it was really well done. Even the shading and lighting, that's like, you know, new school meets old school with their retro style.
Yeah, I look at games like, well, we'll get to it. The development of pixel art has always been a captivating process. Though starting as a workaround for technical limitations, it was utilised and refined to the point that it was ubiquitous in gaming culture. The highs and lows it faced eventually resulted in developers using pixel art as an artistic choice instead of a shortcut for primitive tech. In our eyes, done right, pixel art is beautiful and fun while giving the games a real edge of nostalgia, such as Stardew Valley. One of my particular favourites, which is probably similar to your, what was it, the camp game again? What was it called?
Camp Sunshine?
Camp Sunshine. Read Only Memories 2064. In fact, that was more like, if you're a fan of point and click games from back in the day, Read Only Memories is a fabulous modern love letter to that. So I implore you to check it out. Okay. Dead Cells, Undertale, and Celeste. But as gamers, we wanted something a bit different. We wanted photorealism. It's become a bit of a cliche, but every generation we say, how can they get better than this? How can they improve graphically on this? But they somehow always do. Are we photorealistic yet? No. Are we close? At times. Well, sometimes. But probably no. Do we get closer each generation? Advancement of TV tech? For sure we do, but this is a good thing. But is this a good thing? Well, it's the age-old adage, isn't it? Does it play well? Is it fun? Does it keep you going back for more? Did you and your family or friends lose hours to it? Was it such a marvellous solo experience you lost hours to it and people thought you had died, Bobby, much like I've been doing with Cyberpunk? I guess if yes, then it doesn't matter. I remember drooling over Fallout 3 as I emerged from the bunker. But would we do that now? Probably not. Is it still fun to play? Yeah, I'd say it is, actually. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That goes back to that thing when you get a new console, you get the hottest game on it, and you're like, oh, I don't see how they can improve on this. And you look back in your mind's eye, and it's a hell of a lot better looking than it actually is. Now, I don't know whether that's a glitch in the Matrix or whether that's just our mind filling in the blanks, much like it did when we were playing pixel art games, Bobby, and we were sat at 2 years older with a sweet smeared controller as our father looked on saying, what on earth are you doing to that really expensive piece of technology? And sitting agog at the fact that we could just control something on a screen.
So where are we going with this? It's always nice to push the white-hot edge of gaming, as we say, and with that comes excitement of what they could serve us next. Like visual gluttons, we lurch from the course devouring all we can. The sum of all loves gaming, pursuing the websites, reading the magazines, listening to podcasts, ever chasing the next big hit. So let's embrace the medium as we do and keep on keeping on. So that enough from us. Let's find out what listeners have to say on the subject. If you want to get involved, don't forget, it's super easy to leave a comment on our Instagram or Twitter, on our Twitter show topics for the coming week. And you never know, not only do we read your comment out to the assembled thousands, you could win a prize too. First up.
Well, before we lurch into the listeners' comments, have you got any more further thoughts on that? Because we are gluttons, aren't we? Obviously, if you're sat listening to this now, you can't get enough gaming in your life. You know, back in the day, we'd pick the magazines up and devour over the screenshots. We'd hoover up every website we could find.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this, you are a proper gamer because you can't get enough gaming in. The fact that you're now in a car journey or walking to get your fitness level or your steps in and burn off your calories, you decided to put some gaming in your ears so you don't miss out while you're out the house. I mean, that's...
No, it's true.
We're always, like addicts, we're always scratching for like when the next console's coming out. What's the next big game? What do the graphics look like? What the sounds like? What's it going to be like? Is it open world? Yeah, but how big open world is it? What do the NPCs do? What's this? What's that? What's the other? We just can't get enough of it. And we're always scrabbling for that next big thing, that next big hit.
Yep.
Is PS6 and Xbox 4000 going to be photorealistic or whatever comes out next? Probably not. No. Is the consoles that we've got right now, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, going to be photorealistic? Probably not, no. Are we going to think they are right now? Yeah, maybe. There's times when I play Valhalla and I'm climbing that Roman wall and I think, well, this is like real life. I don't know if it could get any better than this. And I was thinking the other day, if Cyberpunk was in VR, I would never leave it.
Can you imagine 20 years from now what we'd be saying about Cyberpunk or, you know, Demon Souls or Halo? What would we be saying? Would they look like trash? Would they look like what we think like NES games? I mean, it's going to be incredible. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
See, the thing like growing up, you got Nintendo games from your parents, right? They were expensive though. They're almost the same price as they were now. They're much cheaper now.
Mm-hmm. So
you had to play what you had and you enjoyed it, whatever. Then as you get older, you get your own job. You could buy your own games, and it's like it's never enough. You want the next. You keep going. Even right now, like I'm itching for games that's not even out yet. Meanwhile, I'm playing something I wanted. You know, it's like you're a spoiled kid.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely. I personally feel like the corner turned for a game that's acceptable around the PS3 360 era. I can quite happily go back and often do. I mean, the PS5 has kept me away from my dirty love, which is the PS3, I would say, for quite a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
But every night when I've sat down, I've been like, oh, I ought to play a little bit more Yakuza, or oh, maybe I could pull down one of those £1 games again and play that. And it's like, no, you must keep pressing on for the show and all this other stuff. You need to get some of these, you know, get the big hitters knocked down so we can talk about them and give listeners the hands-on feel and info that they want about the latest games and all that other good stuff. But yeah, for me, like the 360 PS3 era, it turned a corner. It's acceptable. A car looks like a car, a bush looks like a bush, a human looks like a human. If you zoom in on their face in a first-person game, they look pretty good still to me.
Yeah.
Will I think they look pretty good back? Like, yeah, I think they'll be acceptable. It will be acceptable. Like, if you look at the PlayStation 1 or the N64, now we will get to be... I wonder if, you know, we've got pixel art fans at the moment. Will we get 3D polygonal art fans where... Let's take Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 1. Those Chilby characters, very simple shading for the individuals outside of the cutscenes, worked in with the rendered backgrounds, much like Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Will we end up getting a nostalgia for that 32, 64-bit Lost era? Or will we just think that, yeah, forget that. We want to forget that.
I almost think... like each couple generations, you appreciate the old a little bit more. Like there are people who love pixel art.
Yeah.
They're obviously gamers, you know, even developers. Yeah, they might not have the money, but like you said, they maybe use it just for aesthetic reasons rather than budget reasons. And they just love the old school style. So with the technology they have now, they can make a real 16-bit looking game looking like you thought as a kid it looked when you played, you know.
But do you think there's going to be the same... Is there going to be the same throwback and passion for a 32-bit game? With the really grubby lowbrow textures and the very simple shapes and geometry. Is there going to be... Like, I can see someone making a game that looks like Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 1. I can see that. I can almost see someone making a game like the best version of a Resident Evil back in the day you can imagine, with, like, great pixel art, 3D models with these rendered backgrounds. But... do we want that? Because we don't want that, do we? We want the 2D one because it's kind of cool that you can make something like that now. But would you want to put yourself through 3D art? Because
like Max Payne, for example.
Yeah.
When it first came out, bam, blew everybody away. His face looked real, you know, I mean, at the time, right? Like the square face, and you see his eyeballs, and you see the anger, and like, oh my god. If you look back at it now, it's like really not that good. But then, if you take it from like an artistic standpoint, like look what these guys did to try to make it as real as it could be, and focus on him. And okay, maybe everything else is kind of like.
Do you know what I'm going to do this week?
Huh?
I'm going to eat a lot of cheese-based potato puff snacks. I'm going to play a hell of a lot of Cyberpunk. But in between, I might dust off the PS2 and either play Max Payne, okay, or as a tribute to Cyberpunk, I might actually put myself through the Matrix games on the PlayStation 2. Because they, obviously Keanu or Keanu Reeves, as your whoever it is calls it. Your stepfather calls it Keanu Reeves. He's in both games, and the realization of him in Cyberpunk, he looks a little bit cross-eyed, to be fair, but he's obviously in Enter the Matrix and the Age of Neo. I quite like to go back, and I've got a soft spot for the PlayStation 2 era games.
Yeah, there are certain games I can go back to, and certain games I'm like,
But I'm going to dust that off for the facial expressions you just talked of, just to see how far we've come and see how well those games or not, as the case may well be.
I mean, even like bullet time, when it slowed down and you can aim and the people got shot and their reactions to the bullets.
Yeah, so that's what when we think of it. I think I've got Max Payne, so I might dust it off as well. But I just remember Max Payne on the PlayStation 2, didn't control very well. It was a PC game that had been ported over. I mean, at the time, we made the best of it because it was all we had. But it didn't control the best.
I don't want to badmouth like Atari artist, but they did what they could do with what they had, right?
Oh,
so I think every system in the games have something that you can always look back and be like, wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna always have to say, oh, for the time.
Yeah.
And then now currently you always wish, oh, that could have been better. Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like how like you want a real person in the game? I mean, come on, it's the best thing
one thing I've noticed, and it's especially true I've noticed it most in VR. In character models on a flat screen game, you just take it as read. When you're in the game, like Blood and Truth, as much as I enjoy the gameplay, when you're talking to the characters in the cutscenes, they feel tiny. They feel like half people. They feel very short, even though you're 6 foot and it represents the 6 foot in the game that you are, because you're looking at the same height as you would be. The characters feel like if you got up close to someone, their face would like fill the whole area that you can see. And you look at the women, their waists are no bigger than my wrist. And I'm not a big human being. I'm not like your typical gamer. I haven't decided to completely morph into the couch, so to speak. In fact, if you have, fair play to you. But I've decided to not take that. But there's no different representations of people in the games. Like the character models are so fragilely small. It's weird. That's one thing that I feel needs to be solved. We've made them wait long enough, Bobby. First up, Finster Gamer. He says, I think the thing to consider firstly is the difference between photorealism and high-resolution games can be one without being the other. Case in point, Cuphead. Very solid point here, listener.
No, it's true.
It's very sharp, crisp-looking game without being realistic, and there are games that aim for realism but can struggle to pull it off well. Resolution for me is the more important factor of the two, as it's the difference between a blurry image or not. The rest is just a choice in art direction. That being said, gameplay is more important over visuals every time. To this day, I still play PS1 games such as Silent Hill, Resident Evil, and they continue to be some of my favourite games for their content, despite the obviously inferior visuals. Yeah, I'm not even that bothered about the visuals in Resident Evil. I mean, Silent Hill took a deeper plunge than Resident Evil did, obviously, because it had more rendered stuff, like 3D engine stuff going on, whereas Resident Evil just did the character models.
And they try to hide a lot with the fog, which I thought was cool.
In Silent Hill, yeah. which actually then added to the mythos of the whole thing, which was very clever. So thank you for that, Finster Gamer. Who's next?
We got RGT, Retro Gamer Thomas. He said, to be honest, I think gameplay is more important, but occasionally you will get a game where the devs have absolutely nailed it with the gameplay and graphics. Example, both new Spider-Man titles, they look fantastic, and gameplay is probably one of the best superhero games ever made. As far as pixels, as a collector and owner of a lot of retro titles, I look back at pixel graphics in similar amazement as I do with my PS5. True. I think both take a long time to make and are equally made by what would describe as artists. Playing Streets of Rage today, I still look at it and think, wow, that's gorgeous. That's literally pixel art. I think overall gameplay is the most important, but each generation there has been, since the start of gaming, there's always been a dev that wants to push the system to the limit graphically and to the point where we have said, wow, how did they do that? Pixels or ray tracing, they're both fantastic to look at.
Don't forget your emojis.
Oh, with a little controller and a little arcade stick.
I'll never forget emojis. Yes, every week you do.
I don't know why.
He's right. I mean, there's a classic example of pixel art done well. It's the Streets of Rage remake. I mean, I played that with the pixel art filter on, and I thought it looked fantastic.
That looked really good, especially with the retro character. They looked great.
Yeah, and can you take a game with 2D art style, pixel art, and then put all the modern stuff on like ray trace? Imagine that. The game that kind of nailed it, and we've skirted around it a couple of times on this show. Shadow Complex. I nearly had one of those moments where I had a senior moment where I couldn't remember. If you haven't played that, Bobby, I don't think you have, but you'd have to dig out your PS3 or PS4 to play it now, because it was one of the games that was hailed as not being backwards compatible with the PS4. PS5, sorry, but it used some really 3D backgrounds, but had that traditional 2D Metroidvania, which is a cliche, a little bit like roguelike these days, but it had that Metroidvania style gameplay, to quote a trope, which made it, a joy to play. It's probably my favorite Xbox Live Arcade title that they brought out. Gaz Loves Games, friend of the show, he says, very good question, good sirs. It's all down to preference. There's pixel gamers and cutting-edge 60 FPS gamers, and those like me who appreciate art in many formats and just want to experience when it's not all about graphics. A great game is made great by what it offers, which isn't always down to resolutions or frames. Green heart emoji, controller emoji, thumbs up emoji.
Yeah. I just appreciate the art regardless, I think. As long as I can, look at it and be like, wow, that's amazing. I'm satisfied. For me at least. Up next, we got Ginger's Game Room. Oh. He says, I haven't been able to tell the difference since the glaucoma setting.
We're going to get a straight comment out of Gene. We appreciate everything he tells us anyway. Beautiful, Gene. I tell you what, with all the afflictions that kid's got, I'm surprised he gets out of bed in the morning. He wants me to adopt him as well. This is my first on-air announcement. I'm going to look into adopting a grown man as my own child, seemingly.
Tax write-off, baby.
Is it? Right, perfect.
100%.
Consider it done. Yeah. Plus, he gets to move out to America with us, so it doesn't really get any better, does it? No. Up next, C. Pliskin. He says, for me, it depends on the title and the level of enjoyment that it wants to give off. Many games that were based off or meant to emulate real life back in the day of King's Atari, such as Adventure or E.T., failed to capture what's supposed to be seen as close to real life, somewhat justifying why the game covers from Atari had lots of effort put into them, as it's supposed to represent what the game was about. That's very true. We've touched on that. The box art was way better than the game sometimes. But on the other spectrum, when we look at the gradual push to photorealism during the late 2000s, where we have titles that are enjoyable alongside that use of visual style, like Uncharted, which certain games made a jump to this style. With Sonic 06, the introduction of realistically based humans didn't really match the usually cartoony nature the series already had, and why something like Sonic Unleashed went to a more Pixar style for both the main cast and its NPCs. In short, I'm personally fine with either form, so long as it doesn't take away or diminish what makes the title itself great beyond its art style. Does that make any sense? Of course it does. I think that's basically what we've all been touching on and saying.
Mhm.
I probably made a complete car crash of your comment, but I got lost halfway through in the Silent Hill like fog, then found my way out towards the end of the comment. And does it make any sense? Yes, of course it does, C. Pliskin.
You know what it's kind of like? Like, let's say, I don't know, we get 10 people and we go to the museum, look at art.
Mm.
9 out of 10, like, oh, that's beautiful. One guy's like, eh. It just really depends on your visual style, I guess.
This next person, before we get away with this, Johan, one of the fabulous members of the Enigmatic Productions, one of the three Musketeers, Musketeers. Did that make any sense, C. Pliskin? Probably not. You probably sat with your headphones on thinking, George, talking a lot of nonsense. Anyway, I watched him stream this week. He did the, I can't remember what it's called now. It's the cyber taxi game that we did in the Stingrays boot a while back. I enjoyed watching him play. It was fantastic. Also went and found the time to watch Bada Bing's to Retro Gaming. He didn't have a mic, so it wasn't long, but I watched him clear out a camp. And I also watched Mr. Graham C. play a little bit of FIFA as well. So it was nice.
Oh, nice.
I popped my head up. I popped up Periscope, went to Periscope depth, popped it up and did a quick circle sweep and back down again. But yeah, as always, Johan and the Enigmatic Productions, they're streaming all the time on Twitch. I feel terribly guilty that I can't keep up with it all, but I've got game. How can I talk about games? I need to game, boys. But I'm there when I can. So don't worry, the guilt is real. What's Johan got to say for him? And I asked him if he was wearing a neckerchief at the time, and he said no. And I said no. Just tell me that you are. So he did. I didn't want the fantasy to pop. For me,
no, you can't.
He's always wearing a neckerchief. His lowest base level, even when he strips down nude at the hospital, he's still wearing the neckerchief.
100%.
He got to, hasn't he?
That's part of him now. You know what I'm saying? If I have to choose, I would go pixel art because that is what it is. Art. That is ageless and timeless. It's like seeing a painting in a gallery. But photorealism is like CGI in movies. You can have Star Wars or The Mummy too. It varies in quality. It can get pretty terrible. As well, depending on the console and power, it can either be amazing or downright awful. Only game where photorealism worked for me was PT, since it literally looked like a photograph and hasn't felt dated at all. Which is true what he's saying, because I think horror games, especially newer ones, really push the photorealism. Yeah. Because how else can you get scared as an 8-bit creature going to scare you?
Yeah.
So if the more real it looks, the more terrified you might be.
Yeah, I think, is it Until Dawn? I think it is, isn't it? That looked,
Until Dawn looked good.
Yeah, I don't think it
probably looks great.
Yeah.
Some of the PC games they have just for horror, the first-person horror games on PC.
Yeah.
Listen, play that at night in headphones. Good luck. Some of them look really good. Really, really good.
Yeah, great. Very eloquently put as well. He's probably took my feature and boiled it down to like 2 sentences, in which case, I might as well just hang up my hat. But thank you for that, Johan. Very good. From his cell in New York Penitentiary, Tommy UK73, former host of the Unofficial Controller podcast, says, always photorealism and 60s. Never. He is that sport brat, isn't he? Always photorealism and 60 FPS where possible. Tom wouldn't be able to tell the difference between 30 and 60 FPS if his life depended. But you know what? Say it anyway. If I want pixel games, I'll play my Switch. I just want to have cutting edge, very best that you can get.
Fair enough.
He's true to his consistent narrative.
Up next, we got digital monkery.
Monkery.
I said monkery. That's how we do it over here.
Do you know what? Monkers, yonkers, whatever you need.
Yep, it's true. We're doing it?
Yeah, well, we're not sure if he's a new listener, because I reckon we've had a comment from him back in the day, but he's gone all in on Discord and Instagram.
He definitely has.
So he just needs to encourage someone to join us, and he's one of the new 100%ers. So let's give him a clap anyway. He's a
new listener.
We need the noise for like 100%er, like 100%er.
Do like a chime, like a, I don't know, something like a chime.
That sort of noise.
But yeah, we'll talk to somebody. Okay, we'll get a sound effect in.
Okay.
Just like with movies, quality of visuals alone doesn't make it good. If you don't have this storytelling gameplay, right, it just won't make it engaging and enjoyable. I did about 3 hours of Death Stranding before I lost interest in it, but found Detroit to be the most emotionally engaging game I played in years. Getting Kara killed just before her happy ending wiped me out. So yes, visuals are important, but they should be the finishing touch into a game, not the only thing lifting it above its mediocrity. As my time for games has shrunk, I found myself drifting more into the direction of gameplay and storytelling over visuals, dropping further and further back into generations as needed, because I need to make sure I'm not wasting my time on something pretty with no substance. That's
Very
true.
solid point. I mean,
And
I found...
it wasn't a spoiler alert that there's many endings in
right,
Detroit.
okay, because I would kind of tuned
So
out. I tried to tune
yeah,
out a little
no,
bit there.
so anything can happen in a game. There's like,
Okay.
I forgot how many endings are,
He
but
did
there's a
3
lot.
hours of Death Stranding before he lost interest. Now, that was a game that visually hooked me in, and then the storytelling hooked me in. But we've said many times, it's probably, as most games aren't for everybody, but that I know is particularly not for everybody. But, you know, much like Cyberpunk, there's a hell of a high wall to climb before you're even in the game. So I understand that people haven't got the time or patience for it in this day and age. Bobaloba says, I like the first bite of a nice dessert or the first sip of a rum and coke. Graphics are great for that initial wow factor, but once you get going, it's the gameplay that makes it good, keeps you playing it. I'll still happily play on my SNES if the game's good.
Very true.
I like that. I like the first bite of a nice dessert or the first
It's true.
sip.
I mean, imagine you get like, you know, you're a female and see a good looking man. You're like, wow,
Hang on a minute.
abs.
Bobaloba doesn't just do games. Bobaloba does the finest games comment you can buy. Like the first bite of a nice dessert or the first sip of a rum and coke. It's this high level of caliber comment that makes Bobaloba the finest of commenters.
Every time he comments,
Mm-hmm.
that's the voice.
That's the voice for him now, is it?
Yeah.
Like the first bite of a nice dessert
Yeah.
or the first sip of a rum and coke. Bobaloba, the finest commenter. Who's next?
Comic Picture 79.
Well, shall I do him? Because then if you do the next guy, I can be...
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Okay. Comic Picture 79, the immortal Adam the Artist. You can find him on Instagram. You can find him on Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
You can find him pretty much everywhere these days. He's Comic Pictures No Space. And on Instagram, he's Comic Picture 79. He says, I don't think they matter at all. It's wonderful to see for sure. Being blown away by visuals is pretty nice, but a great game is a great game regardless of what it looks like. A Link to the Past is easily still the best Zelda, and Ye Are Kung Fu is still good enough to be an esports legend. As always, slightly more sort of succinct and to the point this week, but still absolutely bang on as always by the mighty Scotsman. Who's next?
We got the 16-bit prick, which is the first time I ever read his name, I think.
Making this show mature M-rated all by yourself.
He says, great question. For me personally, graphics don't mean a thing to me as long as the gameplay is fun and enjoyable. A stunning game only works good for so long until the next best thing comes out, but the great gameplay always stands the test of time. I hope pixelated games do stay around. The majority of my favorite games on last gen came from indie developers who went for a more retro feel. I do understand that can be a preference thing, though. A lot of companies could do with taking a step back, take FIFA and the latest WWE games, for example. They look fantastic, but but the gameplay has been awful. And for years now, fans of those games have been sold on them for rather how they look and rather how they play, which I think is more important. It's pointless having stunning gameplay, looking at a game if it's unplayable at times. Yeah. Which is super true. That's what I was saying. Like, you know, your girl at the beach, you see like a, hunk of man with some like 6-pack abs, beautiful hair, just beautiful. Like, wow, he looks great. So the girl says, hey, how are you? He's like, I'm doing fine. You know what I mean? I'm doing fine. Or he can't even speak a sentence. Or, hey, how's the weather? He has no clue what that means. What's the point?
No, there probably is no point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we're all on the same path here, but it was hopefully a question's worth asking. Before we sign off, we've got 2 more listeners' comments. Sign off on the feature. Don't worry, you've still got a third of a slice left of your favourite gaming show, listener. Don't panic. There's no need to look down at your phone or panic because you thought I was about to end the show. There's Bada Bingster Retro Gaming.
I've always been a fan of pixel art, sir. I've always wanted to make a side-scrolling retro pixel art game, but I don't know how to draw or where to start. However, we've paid so much money for new consoles, and I understand that photorealism is important to some people. I think the story needs to be good, otherwise, why play the game? So we have come a long way since the SNES. However, like Bob Loba said, give me an official or unofficial SNES controller, and I will play a game on there. See what I did there, sir, with the unofficial controller for you, sir? Yes, that's and then the emojis before I sign off is a little gaming controller emoji and a trophy emoji and the Italian flag, sir, emoji. Stand still, everybody. Stand up for the Italian national anthem. And sit down, everybody. Yes. But every comment needs to have the flag, you know. I need to say, everybody stand up for the national anthem, sir.
It'd be so amazing. If everyone could throw their flag down, that'd be dope.
Oh, but then there might be an expectation I need to do the voice, and I'm not willing to
that's true.
appropriate
I don't know that
Scotsman
many.
and all that other stuff. Signing off, and he's boiled all this down to a very, very single emoji. Goodness knows why, but we welcome everything. It's 9NE136. He's a new listener. And what we have here is the single flame emoji. One would imagine that means fire, which is what the young kids think is cool. So I don't know whether that means he likes pixels versus photorealism, or whether he thinks the topic's good, or whether he thought the image that we'd shot for our Instagram page was fire. At this moment in time, who even cares? Guess what? He's storming down Fifth from Main like a thing possessed. It's time for a peek in what we affectionately call Stingrays boot, what's nestled between some counterfeit nappies and a dodgy copy of Battlefriend all this week. These are the new release highlights for the week December 7th, December 13th, 2020. Listeners, these are out in digital or physical, or will be by the time this podcast's in your feed, but could be. Oh, yes, they could be. Region dependent. Now, it's time to pick a video. VHS out the boot, pirate VHS no less, and it's also time to pick a mummy game out the boot. Do you know what he's been up to this week?
I haven't seen him.
He's been boxing up copies of Shadowrun for the SNES and selling them off as Cyberpunk 2076.
Makes sense. He tried to sell me a copy of 2078 by Project Rojo. I mean,
perfect. That's the kind of thing I want to see out of Stingrays. Getting back to his roots, his old Stingers. Here's a game straight out the boot that's caused... I mean, I know what my mummy is. I've already raved on about it. I actually think it deserves the good praise right now. Prior to this, it needed the praise. Now it needs the praise. And going forward, it will need the praise. So that's my mummy. Here's a game that's... if you've not on our Discord, then you're missing out on conversations like this, because there was I checked in last week, and there was a really wonderful conversation going on about this. It's Call of the Sea. It's a PC, Xbox Series X, and Xbox One. I believe it's on Games Pass. So if you're a member of Games Pass, it will cost you £0, 0 pence. Much like the highbrow, this show costs you nothing. All we want is your comments. December 8th. This is Call of the Sea is an otherworldly tale of mystery and love set in the 1930s South Pacific. Explore a lush island paradise, solve puzzles, and unlock secrets in the hunt for your husband's missing expedition. This is going to get the community mummy, which is an award I've just invented because of the digital monkery. Adam, a.k.a. Comic Pictures, a.k.a. Finchy, a.k.a. the man of many names, and Finster Gamer having a nice little conversation about this. I checked in on the Discord, saw this, and I was like, this is very game related. This makes me happy to see. Wonderful. This is what upholding the Unofficial Controller podcast standards is about. I mean, I encourage you to talk about anything, but seeing people talk about a game, wonderful. Making digital monkery feel part of the family, amazing.
Beautiful.
What's next?
Doom Eternal for the Switch, December 8th. Hell's armies have invaded Earth, become the Slayer in an epic single-player campaign to conquer demons across dimensions and stop the final destruction of humanity. The only thing they fear is you.
Okay, finally got onto the Switch. The last one they got working pretty well, so one imagines this one looks equally as good. Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, Xbox Series X, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, December 8th. Japan's beloved puzzle game series Puyo Puyo and the renowned Tetris game franchise have teamed up again to deliver even more Puyo popping and Tetrimino cleaning fun in Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. Halfway through Tetrimino, I thought, this is going to end badly, but I pulled it back and finished the sentence without tripping over my own tongue, Bobby.
You did a great job. Thank God I didn't read that. Thank Lord. Up next, we got Snakes on a Plane. What?
Have another look at that title, friend. Your brain filled in the gaps.
Oh my God,
snakes.
it's not Snakes. I'm sorry. It's
so good.
Shakes on a Plane.
Shakes on a Plane. This is
the PG version of Snakes on a Plane. It's PC and Switch, December 8th. Shakes on a Plane is a chaotic co-op shaking game for 1 to 4 players. Flying on various planes with your crew, serve up a variety of tasty shakes, burgers, fries, and many more dishes before the plane lands on the airport, and your passengers rate your services. So basically, it's like Restaurant Diner Dash.
Yeah, I just don't understand why it needs to be. It shakes. It's shaking. I don't understand. I don't know what the answer
Personally,
is.
I've been
tasty shakes. I thought the people had like some sort of shaking disease, but seemingly not.
I've been on a shaky plane, and I thought it was a horror game.
Yeah, I mean,
that's terrifying, dude.
Yeah, you got your faith in God when you leave terra firma. Now, I didn't think we were going to have a roguelike this week, but doing the research to compile the Stingrays boot, Swords of Gargantua is described as a roguelike. It's just not in its all the games companies release a press statement of what the game is. A very short line, sometimes more than a short line. The scoundrels and take up 6 paragraphs of information. But Swords of Gargantua, outside of its press release, described itself as a roguelike. But it's Swords of Gargantua on PSVR, December 8th. This looked actually okay, but very, very simple. It's Swords of Gargantua is a VR sword action game you can experience in single-player mode or online co-op with 3 players. Traverse through the Tesseract Abyss floors with the aim of taking down the giant Gargantua in its deepest floor, Floor 101.
Next, we got Tentem.
Yeah.
For the PS5, December 8th. Tentem is a massive multiplayer creature location adventure. Seek adventure in the lowly airborne Appalachio alongside your Taintum squad. Catch every Taintum, battle other tamers, customize your house, join a friend's adventure, or explore the dynamic online world.
Sounds a bit like an EVA game, but it's actually Pokemon on a budget. Up next, Wood Salt, PC and Switch, December 9th. Wood Salt is an adventure game set on the planet of New Terra. 1,000 years after Earth was evacuated during chaotic natural disasters and attack by giant creatures. Have you picked your mummy yet? Is it the same as me?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, okay.
Up next, we got Animal Farm for PC, December 10th.
Now, careful with this because Stingers has got another copy of Animal Farm in there, which is not really for general consumption. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. Okay.
I can
make sure you pick out the PC game.
Copy that. Orwell's Animal Farm is a text-based choose-your-own adventure game where all the animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Immerse yourself in George Orwell's story of absolute power, corruption, and follow the ups and downs of animalism. Awesome.
Okay, next, Brigandine, The Legend of Runesaria on PS4, December 10th. Conquer the continent in this grand strategy simulation game. The content of Runesaria is home to 6 major powers with more than 40 bases, 100 knights, and 50 types of monsters. Select a ruler, compose your platoons of knights and monsters, and march to claim enemy bases. The player chooses how they will battle, so devise the best strategy to lead your nation toward continental conquest. How will your legend unfold?
And we have, I guess, our pick.
It's our mummy. Normally we have one each, but this week we're going all in. We're telling
Double whammy.
Mummy, we want 2 copies of this. No, I don't care. We can't share. We need to go off to our separate areas and play it in solitary confinement in darkened rooms with a sack of Cheetos, lots and lots of bottled sodas so we don't... and then much like Howard Hughes, once we've consumed a beverage, we will urinate in the beverage bottle and put it at the door for Mumsy to collect. That's what a true Mumsy is. What is it?
Cyberpunk 2077, PC, PS4, Xbox, and Stadia, December 10th. Cyberpunk 2077 is an open-world action-adventure story set in Night City, a megapolis.
A megalopolis.
Megalopolis. I missed a low there. Obsessed with power, glamour, and body modification. You play as V, a mercenary outlaw going after a one-of-a-kind implant that is the key to immortality.
Yes. Amazing. Next, Haven, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, and Xbox One, December 10th. Two lovers gave up everything and escaped to a lost planet to be together. Glide through a mysterious landscape and explore a fragmented world and fight against what's trying to tear them apart in this RPG adventure game about love, rebellion, and freedom.
Then we have Sword of the Necromancer for PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, December 10th. Help Tama to save Coco using the powers of the forbidden Sword of the Necromancer. Turn your foes into allies and reach the depths of the Necromancer's dungeon. Defeat the Guardians to gain enough soul power to bring Coco back from the dead, no matter the cost.
Now, if it wasn't so close to Christmas, I'd be hanging on Mummy's aprons to get this as well. This gets a... If only I could be allowed it, but I'm only allowed one game out the boot. We've got Medal of Honor Above and Beyond PC VR December 11th. Now, I've seen some mixed reviews about this, but when I checked it out, I thought this is absolutely fantastic. You know, it's a very light, graphically, it looks like somewhere between a PS2 and a PS3 game, but it gives you the scope to be a first-person shooter set in World War II, but in VR. It's got all the sort of visuals and set pieces and grand design that this franchise is famous for, but just imagine a really polished PS2, early PS3 game, and that's probably what you're going to get visual-wise. But that didn't take away... The Second World War was full of some of the most hideous but awe-inspiring visual things that the average person in this day and age won't see. In the trailer, I saw a ship sinking, up out the water, and it was sinking down. There was a section in it where I believe you're in a bomber in VR as well. So you're crawling to the back of the plane to get into the gun turret to start firing. Obviously very simplistic gameplay to be firing from a turret, but the fact that you transition through the bomber to get to the turret, I thought this is wonderful, and situations that as modern day people will never get to experience. And this is like a very sort of yeehaw arcadey version of it, one would imagine, but I got pulled in for the short time I spent checking it out. It's Medal of Honor Above and Beyond PC VR December 11th. Take the fight to war-torn Europe in Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. The franchise returns to its roots, complete with a single-player campaign, multiplayer modes, and powerful interviews with survivors and veterans of the Second World War. So yeah, with that, I haven't forgotten. My VHS pick this week is Look Who's Talking. Kirstie Alley, John Travolta, and John McClane. That's the character who plays.
Mm-hmm.
George, come on. Bruce Willis as the voice of the child. Bit of fun, bit of light. I would say it's fun for all the family. And in the 80s and the 90s, we certainly used to have a little bit more acceptance that kids would just watch stuff and not get it. But would I show this to my kids? Not when the opening intro is an egg and some sperms.
That was wild.
And a man cheating on his a wife with Kirstie Alley to father the child. For the most part, it's acceptable. It really is. But there's some, I don't know. Is it a family movie? No.
Mm-mm.
Is it a film you could watch with teenagers? Not without some embarrassment on both of yours part. Is it a film you can enjoy with a loved one, a girlfriend, boyfriend?
Well, it's like a rom-com kind of like, right?
Yeah, it's a rom-com. Damn right. It's fine. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my pick. What's yours?
Barbarella.
Oh, wow.
With Jane Fonda.
One of my favourite Duran Duran songs as well.
Oh, yes. What was the name of the song?
Electric Barbarella. Well, that's the main chorus of the song. I think that's what it's called. Electric Barbarella.
They made it for that movie?
Yeah, it's kind of loosely based around it. And,
that's pretty cool.
They've got some links back to Barbarella anyway, so it was nice they did the song. But yeah,
I watched it long time ago, and then I was just snooping around the Amazon, Prime movies, or whatever. Even was sleeping, I'm like, oh wow, Barbarella, I haven't seen this in forever. So I put it on, watched it. It is a stupid movie, but it is what it is. But because of that movie, I got recommended probably every B rated grindhouse movie, from horror to action to sci-fi. So
Oh my!
I'm going down a road that I can't turn back around yet. It's
Well,
some
you've
memories.
decided to watch Barbarella again because Stingrays pulled it out from the cavernous boot of his Nissan Bluebird and he slapped it in your palm with a copy of Cyberpunk 2078 for you and a copy of Cyberpunk 2076 for the Atari 2600 for me. I don't think we're going to be getting quite what we wanted, but do you know what? We're happy. All right? Bag of Cheetos. Yeah, we'll be fine.
Fine.
With that, the boot slammed, your wheel spins off. There's no sound effect for him leaving because we're a show that can only afford a sound effect for him arriving. All right. That's what we're like. But those who paid attention at the top of the show, Bobby, they know that the show can only end when I ask you what you're hoping to play. What are you hoping to play, friend?
Definitely Valhalla. Just keep that going. And I think to take a little bit of breaks if I get too, I don't know, bored of hopping around everywhere. I want to finish up Mutant League. I just need 2 trophies left.
Yeah.
For the 100%. And then I really don't have anything else currently, but I can go back on something else maybe, but we'll see. But those 2 I'll focus on this week.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm planning on doing another probably unhealthy stint on Cyberpunk, punctuated by small crashes, one would imagine, here, there, and everywhere. He saves frequently, so it's not so much of an issue. You normally get back into it. But, I mean, one would imagine it's maybe the saves that are causing it to crash, because when you get back in the game, it's literally right before you get crashed. So, you know, I don't want to send CD Projekt Red on a wild goose chase, but I would probably start there, to be fair.
Interesting.
Other than that, I'll probably try and platinum Miles Morales this week and get it all done and dusted. Again, we don't do spoilers on the show, but it'll be nice to be able to give you a full total completion point of view. Nothing will change, I don't think. My opinion of it being a top tier launch game. Although it's cross-gen, it's certainly making the most of the PS5. So I'll get that done so I can park that. I feel guilty I'm not playing more Valhalla. I just want to mainline the main story now, to be fair. I mean, Asgard can go swivel. I went in there way too low level for it and got stuck creating a portal with an artist who was painting on some rocks. And I got besieged by these guys and they were just too high level for where I was at the time. And I was getting close to getting them, but there was just too many of them. And one of the guys with the big stick, he was like, and it was like, I was dead.
Done.
So
you know, my problem is now.
What's that?
I put the game on hard.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm way over leveled.
Yeah.
For anything, and I don't know where I am game wise, but I maybe Jorvik mid game. I don't know, right? Like I haven't even completed all the alliances yet, so I don't know where. But that's where I am. And then everyone, like literally, if they hit me, I block them or I parry them. They're dead.
Yeah.
I have to go higher in difficulty.
That's the way you choose to play it. I mean, the way I choose to play it, I'm over 60 level anyway. So, if I see, I don't go out my way to collect hoover up every single bit of yellow, but if there's something within the vicinity that's not too far away, yeah, I'll hoover it up. And I absorbed all of Norway before I left. And then Britain, I've kind of just I've just lost my way. Like the Assassin's Creed games, when I did my big run of Assassin's Creed at the start of the year and I decided I'd play through them all and I lost my way with it. And to me, this game, it's so bloated, but there's no hook to keep me going. I don't think like the only standout story mission that I did was that one in East Anglia, which left me thinking, do you know what? I enjoyed all the characters. I enjoyed all the gameplay that was introduced or used during that section. And when it finished, I was like, yeah, that was good. I don't know where I've got to go to next. It might be York, see,
my problem with it is Vikings. But you're not very Viking, are you?
No.
You go raid a camp and it's your people are with you, but there's no there's no shield wall.
Well, Finch, you said this in the Discord.
By accident, if you kill an enemy, but there's a pedestrian nearby, it says if you do another one, you'll be desynchronized.
Yeah,
That's
like
war, bro.
when Vikings raided monasteries,
You know?
they killed everybody, the monks
Yeah.
included. Yeah, if
Like,
you
I'm not
kill,
saying,
when I first raided a monastery in the game,
yeah,
a monk was running up the road, so I got my bow out and
me
shot him in
too.
the
I did
back,
the same thing.
and
I
it
did
was
the
like
same thing.
desynchronized. I
Yeah.
was like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Like,
I can only be a Viking, a woke Viking, and some of the decisions that are made story-wise, like I know it's a modern telling, and they're using modern-day lenses to look back through the Vikings, but some of the things that are said, some of the things that are done, are so non-Viking. Like at the wedding, one of the brothers, another one of the brothers, not the brothers from the previous storyline we talked about last week, came up and he's like, "Hey, you know, I don't know if you're interested, but would you be interested in?" And Evor's like, "What? You want me to plow you?" And I'm thinking, okay, that's very, very, very 21st century.
That's the thing, though, right? Like, you could be male, female, whatever, and you could do whatever you want.
Right.
So if you're the female, cool, no problem. You're right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, what if you're, you know, a homosexual man? That's cool, right? Okay, cool. Like, I can, you know, I have the ability to choose now. But if you're just, you know, a regular person, you're like, no thanks. You know, I'd rather go for the female, or vice versa. Maybe you're, you know, female, cool. There's options there. The problem is,
well, to be fair, I just don't think it adds anything to the story. Like before I left Norway, I went into a pool for this woman near a waterfall and pulled out a comb. And then it was like, well, the story, the dialogue tree sort of ended up with me laying on a rug with her and me having a night of or afternoon of pleasure together. And when it was finished, she was an NPC, so her facial animations weren't great, and the level of dedication to her wasn't that great. So she didn't look amazing. She wasn't of any interest to me. Did I feel anything from that? No. Did it add anything to the story? No. Did it add anything to the gameplay? No. There's no place for it at all.
Even like, okay, my first girlfriend, I forgot her name. She's the archer, the huntress.
Yeah.
In your town. Okay, cool. Now you have the option for other women. You don't break up. You don't do anything. It's just a thing you can do.
Yeah.
Does it add into the game? No. Like The Witcher. I mean, yeah, the first time you went to a brothel, you know, it's pretty funny. Ha ha ha. Okay, cool. But once you do, it's the same animation.
Yeah. Well,
you get nothing from it. So what's the point?
I clicked on that. I ended up going to a street in Cyberpunk, and a woman appropriated me, and I sort of said, "Oh, hi, you know, blah blah." It was like $100 to spend the night with her, and it did all this cutscene. And I thought to myself, this game's 18 rated, so technically an adult is the only person that can buy it.
Yeah.
Anyone who got the kicks from that, strange. Anyone who thought, oh, that, you know, an adult is like, yeah, oh, that feels like a mature game now because that option was in there. Like, really? Nah.
To me, like, even the God of War games from PS3, yeah, there was a mini game for a sexual encounter. It's just there to be there. Was there a point to it, really? I mean, did it make or break the game? No. What's the issue? What's the point? You know? There's the phone.
That's Sal Buccio. He says it's time to end the show.
Let's end it.
Yeah, let's. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure, and no doubt we'll speak to our fine listeners here next week. But that's all we have time for this week, listeners. As always, thank you for your time. We look forward to the pleasure of speaking to you again next week. Until then, happy gaming, and remember, there's nothing wrong with being given the unofficial controller. It's what you do with it that counts. I've had a wonderful time, Bobby, as always. Take care.
Thank you.
See you, listeners. Bye.
Bye.
Unofficial Controller Podcast is now the property of Zudamax Media. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a review wherever you found this show. Zudamax Media is the world's largest streaming service straight out of Mexico.